ॐ भद्रं कर्णैभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागं सस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Let's pray together, friends. We offer our salutations to the all-loving being who endows all beings with consciousness. We meditate on the Lord, who is the origin of the universe. Lord, Thou abidest in all. Thou art all. Thou assumest all forms. Thou art the origin and goal of all. Thou art the self of all. Thou art existence, knowledge and bliss. Salutations unto Thee. May the world be peaceful. May the wicked become gentle. May all creatures think of mutual welfare. May their minds be occupied with what is spiritual and abiding. May our hearts be immersed in selfless love for the Lord. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Welcome, dear friends, on this occasion of the birth anniversary of Sri Ramakrishna. We are having celebrations of various forms. We had the ritual worship in the morning, flower offerings by the devotees, a lot of wonderful singing, and there was a nice video documentary on the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. And now we shall have a symposium on the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. We shall begin this symposium with the opening song. It is a beautiful prayer seeking the grace of Sri Ramakrishna. Oh Sri Ramakrishna, we do not have that much devotion for you, but please cast a glance full of compassion on us, so that we will get redeemed. This is a Sanskrit hymn composed by Swami Abhedananda, one of the great direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, who actually preached Vedanta for over 20 years in Vedanta Society of New York. So we shall begin that song. Tapos, Rahul, RIshi, it seems you are destined to play tabla. Last time I was playing, it fell down.
Oh. So push it a little bit further, that's fine.
That's good, a little bit, yeah.
You got it?
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Turn it around if need be.
This is,
Okay.
it's a little bit.
It gives more resonance.
More than you need, actually.
Okay.
Ramakrishna Srajasi Tvameva Tvam Adidevo Vidiham Si Sarvam Hey Ramakrishna Tvai Bhakti Hine Kripa Kataksham Gurudeva Nityam
push here. Yeah. So this has been a tradition, friends, for last many years, that on the occasion of these birthday celebrations, we arrange a symposium where we try to get the special features of the lives and teachings of these great spiritual personalities from those who have been studying these lives and practicing the teachings for quite some time. Today, it is really a very special occasion. We have 3 youngsters presenting their thoughts in this symposium. But remember, they might be comparatively very young in age, but they have been studying the life teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and all that goes with it. From a very young age, they have been blessed to get into this stream, let us put it like that, in this stream of the Ramakrishna order from childhood. They have been initiated at a very young age and have been sincerely practicing these teachings, meditating and trying to apply those things in their lives. So I request the participants, RIshi Dhar, Rashmi Joshi, and Sarah Phat. So please, you can take whatever chair you like, then remaining I will choose. I will be left with, I will have no choice. So we shall begin this symposium with Rashmi Joshi. So she will present, a general, very good overview of the importance of the life of Sri Ramakrishna in this modern age, the incarnation of our times. The incarnation is demanded by a particular time and the situation, and so takes the form according to the needs of the occasion. I read what she had to say on this symposium, so I have a kind of preview of everything. So I am telling you that this is the content in gist.
स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय Ramakrishnaaya te namaha. To the one who came to establish spirituality, one who is the personification of all faiths and religions, one who is the greatest embodiment of the divine, to that Ramakrishna I offer my salutations. A very good evening, respected Swamiji, devotees and friends. Since morning today, we have been celebrating this very auspicious occasion, the day God, out of His infinite compassion for humanity, incarnated Himself in the form of Sri Ramakrishna. The personality of Sri Ramakrishna is so lofty, and every aspect of it so profound, that it is very difficult indeed to talk about him. And to be honest, I feel myself the least qualified here at this august gathering to speak on Sri Ramakrishna. However, I have put down my thoughts and gleanings from some articles and books on the significance of the advent of Sri Ramakrishna and his teachings, which I am sharing with you today. It has been written by the authors of the Puranas, the ancient texts, that every happening in this world has a cause, and accordingly, the Lord assumes a body and acts out his divine Leela or play only when a universal need demands it. It is then the necessity of an age that calls forth an incarnation of God, the all-knowing teacher of the world, to shed a new light on religion and redirect humanity towards its spiritual evolution. This I have quoted from the book Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, by Swami Shardananda. Now again, the needs and demands of each age are different. God, in the incarnation of Rama, came to establish righteousness in an age mired in immorality and evil. Krishna, the divine charioteer, expounded the Gita on the battlefield and taught mankind the true meaning of dharma, or the right way of living. The incarnation of Christ stands out for its infinite patience, love, and compassion for mankind, while Buddha shows us the middle path to nirvana or enlightenment. Coming back to the hero of our talk, Sri Ramakrishna, that same power, God, incarnated as Sri Ramakrishna in response to the complex needs and demands of our modern age. He came in at a time when our world stood at the crossroads of the old and the new, and oftentimes neither accepted the other. Sri Ramakrishna was the bridge between the two. Like a petulant teenager in a hurry to accept the new and the modern, the world was discarding everything it had held close to its bosom till now. Religion, values, beliefs, traditions, all were scanned under the microscope of science and logic, and if found unsatisfactory, discarded outright. And for this, no one but the old was to be blamed, for it had long surrendered its essence of true religion and its faculties of practical reasoning at the altar of superstition and bigotry. It had no answers to offer to modern thinkers. The world was swept by a wave of skepticism and disbelief, and it was as though the core or soul of humanity was once again calling out to that great power we call God to come down and restore sanity in humanity. This is how the advent of our modern age looked like, and this was the time God once again incarnated himself out of his supreme compassion for humanity. Born to an extremely simple, pious, poor, dignified, and self-respecting couple in an insignificant, tiny hamlet called Kamarpukur near Kolkata in India, was born Gadadhar, who would later be called Sri Ramakrishna, the incarnation of our age. Since he was to encounter more complex issues than the previous ages, we can say that he was an enhanced version of the previous incarnations. And how did this unassuming, simple, dhoti-clad, bearded priest of the Kali temple become one of the greatest teachers of spirituality, who the whole world acclaims today? What is it that attracts so many, irrespective of culture, creed, or nationality? Sri Ramakrishna made it his life's mission to realize God, and he worked as a scientist to that end. His body was his laboratory, and after formulating his spiritual hypotheses, he conducted his experiments and drew inferences from them. He tested all the God theories that were known to him, so he had ready answers to all sorts of questions that seekers who came later threw at him. Can God be realized through all religions? Ramakrishna decided to test if this was true. And what did he do? He immersed himself completely in this experiment, and through his total one-pointed focus and concentration, he obtained his answer in a very short time. There were seekers like Narendranath Datta, who later became Swami Vivekananda, who tested Sri Ramakrishna thoroughly before accepting him as his guru and spiritual master. We know how the spiritual unfolding of the young priest of the Kali temple took place, and how, through his great spiritual experiences, he readied himself for the next stage of his divine play as Sri Ramakrishna, the great master. The way Sri Ramakrishna taught his disciples was very interesting. He never enforced one particular method or path for one's spiritual progress, but would rather observe the disciples' bent of mind and then decide which path was the best one for him or her. He gave separate instructions to Narendranath and again to Rakhal, who later became Swami Brahmananda. Also worthy of mention here is the way Sri Ramakrishna transformed the life of the maverick, Girish Chandra Ghosh. Girish loved the master dearly, but was unable to adhere to any rules or regulations needed to lead a spiritual life due to his erratic lifestyle. Sri Ramakrishna saw the yearning heart of a great spiritual aspirant buried below all the clutter of worldliness and devised a unique method for teaching this disciple. There is a common thread that runs through all the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, and that is the importance of bhakti, or love for God, or your chosen deity. Time and again, he was quoted as saying that in this age, that is Kali Yuga, it is bhakti alone that will ferry one across the ocean of Maya, or illusion and worldliness. In his inimitable style, he would say that jnana is like a distinguished gentleman and can take you to the courtyard of the Lord. But bhakti is like a woman and easily mingles with the other women of the house to enter the innermost chambers of the Lord. He was quick here, though, to add that this bhakti needs to be tempered with either jnana, karma, or meditation or Raj Yoga, else it may become reduced to senseless emotionalism. For an easier understanding of Sri Ramakrishna's teachings for living a spiritual life and developing bhakti, his teachings may be classified into 5 commandments. First one, repeat God's name and sing his glories. Second, keep holy company and now and then visit God's devotees and holy men. The mind cannot dwell on God if it is immersed day and night in worldliness, in worldly duties and responsibilities. Number 3, it is most necessary to go into solitude now and then and to think of God. To fix the mind on God is very difficult in the beginning, unless one practices meditation in solitude. When a tree is young, it should be fenced all around. Otherwise, it may be destroyed by cattle. Number 4, discriminate between the real and the unreal. God alone is real, the eternal substance. All else is unreal, that is impermanent. And number 5, do all your duties, but keep your mind on God. Live with all, with wife, children, father, mother, and serve them. Treat them as if they were very dear to you, but know in your heart of hearts that they do not belong to you. On his second visit to Sri Ramakrishna, M., the chronicler of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, received these 5 commandments from the great master. M. practiced them to perfection all his life and taught them to devotees who used to visit him. These 5 commandments are of supreme importance for those who wish to progress in spiritual life. The devotees of Sri Ramakrishna especially must remember and assess their spiritual progress in the light of these commandments. I wish to conclude this talk by reciting freely some part of a poem that I heard some time ago. The auction room was crowded. People were waiting to see. An old violin covered with dust was going for $3. Suddenly, there came a bearded man who picked up the bow, wiping the dust from the old violin and tightening up the strings. He played a melody, pure and sweet as angels sing. From $3, its price rose. $3,000, the final bid. The audience cheered, but some of them cried, "What changed the worth of the old violin? We just don't understand." The answer to the question is, it was the touch of the master's hand. Friends, on this auspicious occasion, let us pray sincerely to Sri Ramakrishna that he, out of his great compassion, may walk into our lives and bestow upon us his divine touch so that we too are transformed, just like the old violin. Let us today submit our petition to him to take us up, covered though we may be by the dust of worldliness, and to fine-tune us to become instruments worthy of his music. Thank you.
So beautiful, so nice, so touching, dear Rashmi. Rashmi had been going to the Ramakrishna mission in Mumbai ever since her childhood with her parents, and of course now she lives in Connecticut, but has kept up the spiritual practice, that fervor of those teachings, as you can see how deep her study is. Now we shall listen to RIshi Dhar. He also has been, from his early childhood, got into this holy stream. He was initiated by Swami Adishwarananda ji in New York when he was just a little boy. How old were you?
Must have been 7 or 8.
Something like that, 7. And has been going to Vivekananda Vidyapith, a unique institution in Wayne, New York, where the young minds, they get trained into these spiritual ideas and these wonderful ideals. So he had been coming to our young adult retreat for last some years, and this time I made a special request to come and speak at this symposium, and he drove in the rains and snow early morning, started from New Jersey and came here on time, and you heard him singing, playing tabla, playing harmonium, and now you will listen to his speech too. Rishi.
Dear revered Swami Yogatmananda ji, fellow devotees and friends, Namaste.
and happy Sri Ramakrishna's birthday to you all. I'll preface my speech by saying I quoted and paraphrased freely and heavily from Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, which is the translation of Swami Shardananda Ji's Ramakrishna Leela Prasanga. You will see this throughout the speech. So on this wonderful day of celebration, I would like to share a few ideas on the topic, how Sri Ramakrishna trained Narendranath. So let us first take a look at how Sri Ramakrishna regarded his beloved Narendra. The first time Narendranath visited the master at Dakshineshwar, Thakur immediately observed the detached inward nature of Naren. Studying this incident further, we see that from the very beginning of their relationship, Sri Ramakrishna was strongly attracted to whom he described as such a great spiritual aspirant possessing a superabundance of sattva. On another occasion, Sri Ramakrishna said, "My Narendra is a coin with no alloy whatsoever. Toss it up, and you hear the truest sound. He is not like other Brahmos. He is a true knower of Brahman. He sees light when he sits for meditation. Is it for nothing that I love Narendra so much?" So we see how Sri Ramakrishna found his great disciple in Narendranath. And Thakur himself naturally took on the role of the Guru. Quote, "Possessed of the immediate knowledge of Brahman, the high-minded Guru became restless owing to an anxious eagerness to pour all the realizations of his spiritual life into the mind of the very worthy disciple as soon as he met him. We see this in Narendra's second visit to the master. This time he came alone. In a strange mood, the master touched him and brought about a strong spiritual state in him. So strong, in fact, that Narendra began to cry out as he could not bear the experience for long. Quote, laughing loudly, Sri Ramakrishna touched his chest with his hand and said, "Let it then cease now. It need not be done all at once. It will come to pass in course of time." There is no doubt that even in this early encounter, the master felt inclined to induct Narendra at once into ecstasy, thus making him a knower of Brahman. These actions show how Sri Ramakrishna wanted nothing else but to give his disciple that highest knowledge. On this selfless eagerness of the master, Swami Shardananda wrote, "That profound eagerness cannot be measured. That unmotivated restlessness, free from the slightest tinge of selfishness, occurs in fulfillment of the divine will in the minds of the gurus who are perfectly poised and contented in the self alone. It is under this kind of higher impulsion that world teachers impart the saving knowledge to worthy disciples and help them shake off the shackles of desire and attain to perfection." On Narendra's third visit too, even though he exercised great caution so as not to come under the spell of the master, one touch overwhelmed him and he lost consciousness completely. These two spiritual experiences left a great impression on Narendra and produced the great revolution in his ideas. Narendra formerly had great objection to accept another man as guru or spiritual guide, but his convictions in this respect were severely shaken. He understood that such souls, though rare, are actually born in the world. Souls whose extraordinary love, purity, penance, and renunciation far surpass the conception of God existing in the little minds and intellects of ordinary men. Therefore, if they are accepted as gurus, ordinary men will be greatly benefited." Unquote. Even from these first few meetings, we see just how much Sri Ramakrishna left an impact on Narendra's mind, guiding him and pushing him further and higher. This gives us a hint into how Sri Ramakrishna trained Narendranath. So subtly and profoundly, he taught simply through their everyday interactions, without even the conscious awareness of the disciple that he is being trained. Quote, "The sweet memory of the days Narendra spent with the master at Dakshineshwar during this period filled his mind with infinite joy throughout his life. He said, 'It is difficult to explain to others how blissfully I spent my days with the master. It is simply astonishing to think how, through play, merriment, and other ordinary daily activities, he gave us the most exalted spiritual education and molded our lives without our knowledge. A powerful wrestler instructing a boy displays only a little of his skill and power, just what is needed for the purpose of teaching. He produces self-confidence in the boy, sometimes by appearing to defeat him only with great difficulty, and sometimes by allowing himself to be defeated by him. The Master assumed such an attitude in teaching us, his disciples. He saw a whole sea in a drop of water, as they say. Unquote. This egoless desire to uplift the student portrayed in the wrestler beautifully parallels with that of Sri Ramakrishna. Though the Master showed such intense and unearthly love to Narendra, many of us are familiar with how Narendra tested Sri Ramakrishna extensively before accepting him wholly as his guru. But, quote, instead of feeling wounded on account of that unbecoming attitude of Narendra, the Master submitted himself gladly to be tested, so that the disciple might have the satisfaction of realizing spiritual truths. Narendra continued describing Sri Ramakrishna's modes of teaching, quote, through ecstasy, he had the knowledge that the seed of spirituality hidden in our hearts would one day develop into a fully developed tree with flowers and fruits. He would praise and encourage us in every way and at all times. And observing very carefully each of our actions, he kept us under restraint by giving us instruction, lest we should get entangled in worldly attachments, desires, and ambitions, and fail to reach our spiritual goal. But we would not know at all that he had observed us so minutely and controlled us so effectively. That was an extraordinary skill which the Master displayed in teaching us and molding our lives. Unquote. Finally, let us look at a powerful incident in Narendranath's life. On his father's sudden death, Narendra learned that his family was left with debt, and so they were thrown into severe poverty. Narendra felt the full weight of responsibility to provide for 5 or 6 persons without any source of income. Many days Narendra would not eat so that his mother and brothers may have enough to eat. Even after working several temporary jobs, Naren was searching for a permanent means to sustain his brothers and mother. Finally, he came to the Master, thinking he would surely listen to his beloved Naren and pray for the security of his family. However, the Master in turn said, with affection, I prayed to the mother many times indeed to remove your sufferings, but as you don't accept the mother, she does not grant the prayer. So saying, he directed Narendra straight to the mother. Narendranath, though at the time ignorant of the Divine Mother, was overwhelmed by the living, pure consciousness he saw that night in the temple. Though he tried 3 times, he was unable to ask for anything less than for the highest knowledge and devotion. At last he realized how limited his initial desire was. Quote, what a trifling thing have I come to ask of the mother. It is, as the Master often says, just like the folly of asking a king, after having received his grace, for gourds and pumpkins. After receiving the mother's grace, he came back to the Master's room, learned the bhajan Amar Matam Hitara, a song praising the glories of the Divine Mother, from the Master, and sang it the whole night. The next day, Sri Vaikunthanath Sanyal came to visit the Master. Vaikunthanath related the happenings of that day. I came to Dakshineshwar and saw the Master sitting alone in his room, and Narendra sleeping on one side outside the room. Smiling with joy, the Master said, Narendra has accepted Kali. It is very good. Is that not so? Seeing that he was happy like a child on account of that, I said, yes, sir, it is very good. A little afterwards, he smiled again and said, Narendra has accepted the mother. It is very good. What do you say? He thus expressed his joy, saying it over and over again. On waking up, Narendra came and sat beside the Master in the room at about 4 p.m. The Master entered into ecstasy as soon as he saw him, and touching Narendra's body with his, sat almost on his lap, saying, what I see is that this, his own person, I am. And this too, Narendra's person, I am. Truly, I say, I see no difference. End quote. The Master then suddenly had a desire to smoke, insisting, this am I, that also am I. The Master smoked a few puffs and compelled Narendra to smoke from the Master's hand. The Master was about to smoke again when Narendra objected that he had polluted the Master's hand. The master replied, "You rascal, you are awfully conscious of differences." And so saying, smoked with his own hands that had been touched by Narendra's lips while smoking. After that incident, on many occasions Narendra said, "Ever since our first meeting, it was the master alone and no one else, not even my own mother and brothers, who always had uniform faith in me. That faith and that love of his have bound me to him forever. It was the master alone who knew how to love. He did love, while others only feign to love for the sake of their self-interest." The childlike joy expressed by Sri Ramakrishna on Narendra's acceptance of the Divine Mother speaks volumes to his egoless love for Narendranath. And we can see also the immense impact this experience left on the disciple for the rest of his life. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishi. This was another example that how Rishi has wonderfully put the same example that he was giving, that in a drop he has filled the ocean. Many wonderful things. This is a great topic because in the Leela Prasangas that Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play, you will see that only this example has been taken in details of transformation. How the touch of Sri Ramakrishna, the master touch, transformed this young man. Why Narendranath was taken up? Because in Narendranath, all the quest of modern age has been concentrated, condensed, and presented with all refinement. So therefore, when Narendranath is answered, when Narendranath gets that quest fulfilled from the touch of Sri Ramakrishna, who exemplified wisdom eternal, then we all get fulfilled. So therefore, Narendranath and Sri Ramakrishna, that contact, that interaction assumes immense importance. Now we will have the third speaker of this symposium, Sarah Phat. She also has been associated with this stream. She had been swimming in this holy stream since her childhood, and so when I requested, she said she will take up some parables of Sri Ramakrishna, all the great incarnations of God taught in parables. So Sri Ramakrishna was no exception. So, dear Sarah, please.
Hello, friends. On Sri Ramakrishna's birthday, let us celebrate the life of Sri Ramakrishna by remembering his immense skill as a storyteller. Sri Ramakrishna was a divine teacher, but he presented his knowledge humbly through his stories and humor. Sri Ramakrishna distilled the truth of the scriptures into narratives simple enough for even a child to understand. Such was his way. He resembled an ordinary man, but he was far from that. Hearing the stories again, it's not difficult to imagine the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna gathered around him, filling the room with laughter and merrymaking. Sri Ramakrishna uses the stories to hold up a mirror to our human behavior and make us laugh at our own absurdity. He can impart tough lessons by sweetening them with these stories. While some of Sri Ramakrishna's stories are original, many of them are part of the Hindu cultural identity. But they can reach across cultural borders because the parables told by Sri Ramakrishna appeal to humanity's love of storytelling. On another level, the way that Sri Ramakrishna recounts his stories parallels how God weaves his divine play, Leela. Every story contains a beginning, a middle, and an end. Thus, stories are rooted in the relative plane of existence. His stories are populated with gods, animals, men, heroes, and villains. But in the end, these characters are just pieces of his narrative that help to impart Sri Ramakrishna's lessons. Likewise, God's Leela has so-called bad and good people, and everything in between, and all things in the universe. But in the end, these various things are all derived from God, him or herself. On another level, I just want to share some of my favorite parables told by Sri Ramakrishna, which can be found in the Gospel, but have been compiled in a nice little collection called Tales and Parables of Sri Ramakrishna. The first parable. Such indeed is Maya. Once Narada besought the Lord of the universe, Lord, show me that Maya of thine which can make the impossible possible. The Lord nodded assent. Subsequently, the Lord one day set out on a travel with Narada. After going some distance, he felt very thirsty and fatigued. So he sat down and told Narada, Narada, I feel much thirsty. Please get me a little water from somewhere. Narada at once ran in search of water. Finding no water nearby, he went far from the place and saw a river at a great distance. When he approached the river, he saw a most charming young lady sitting there, and was at once captivated by her beauty. As soon as Narada went near her, she began to address him in sweet words, and ere long, both fell in love with each other. Narada then married her and settled down as a householder. In course of time, he had a number of children by her. And while he was thus living happily with his wife and children, there came a pestilence in the country. Death began to collect its toll from every place. Then Narada proposed to abandon the place and go somewhere else. His wife acceded to it, and they both came out of their house leading their children by the hand. But no sooner they come to the bridge to cross the river than there came a terrible flood, and in the rush of the water all their children were swept away, one after another, and at last the wife too was drowned. Overwhelmed with his grief at his bereavement, Narada sat down on the bank and began to weep piteously. Just then, the Lord appeared before him, saying, "O Narada, where is the water, and why are you weeping?" The sight of the Lord startled the sage, and then he understood everything. He exclaimed, "Lord, my obeisance to thee, and my obeisance also to thy wonderful Maya." This story highlights the immersive nature of Maya. Who here has experienced waking up tired from a dream? Although it's been a few years since I've been in school, I used to have a recurring dream of missing a statistics test and getting into big trouble. The weight of the dream reality makes things feel so urgent, but when you awaken, you can laugh about what seemed urgent and dire in your dream. Maya engulfs Narada when he wanders away from God, but as soon as God calls him, he comes to his senses. And once he awakens from his dream, he does not mourn the loss of what he held dear in the dream. He does not feel angry with the Lord for his suffering. He realizes that God's play is beyond human understanding. The second parable. Welcome good, and evil welcomes you. A Brahmana was laying out a garden. He looked after it day and night. One day, a cow strayed into the garden and browsed on a mango sapling, of which the Brahmana used to take special care. When he saw the cow destroying his favorite plant, the Brahmana became wild with rage and gave such a severe beating to the animal that it died of the injuries received. The news spread like wildfire that the Brahmana had killed the animal. When anyone attributed the sin of that act to him, the Brahmana, who professed himself to be a Vedantin, denied the charge, saying, "No, I have not killed the cow. It is my hand that had done it, and as God Indra is the presiding deity of the hand, it is he who incurred the sin of killing the cow, not I." Indra, in his heaven, heard of this. He assumed the shape of an old Brahmana and came to the owner of the garden and said, "Sir, whose garden is this?" The Brahmana replied, "Mine." Indra said, "It is a beautiful garden. You have got a skillful gardener, for see how neatly and artistically he has planted the trees." The Brahmana said, "Well, sir, this is all my work. The trees were planted under my personal supervision and care." And Indra said, "Very nicely done indeed. Who has laid out this path? It is very well planned and neatly executed." And the Brahmana replied, "All that has been done by me." Then Indra said with folded hands, "When all these things are yours, And when you take credit for all the work done in this garden, it is not proper that poor Indra should be made responsible for killing the cow. Sri Ramakrishna instructs us how to live our lives. Because of our ego, we feel that our good fortune in life is due to our self-efforts. But we think of God when misfortune befalls us. It is true that self-effort is required in spiritual life, but the aspirant must remember God in all circumstances, good or bad. One requires self-effort in order to prime oneself to receive God's grace. The gardener in the story claims credit for his hard work when the end result is praise, but he places blame on God when he has to accept responsibility. In matters of work, Sri Ramakrishna teaches that we must remember God while displaying self-effort, but leave the products of our work to God. Otherwise, the work becomes another aspect of ego. We must try to develop indifference. And the third parable. One who sees elephant god should heed the words of Mahut god. In a forest, there lived a holy man who had many disciples. One day, he taught them to see God in all beings, and knowing this, to bow low before them. A disciple went to the forest to gather wood for the sacrificial fire. Suddenly, he heard an outcry, "Get out of the way! A mad elephant is coming!" All but the disciple of the holy man took to their heels. He reasoned that the elephant was also God in another form, so why should he run from it? He stood still, bowed before the animal, and began to sing its praises. The Mahut of the elephant was shouting, "Run away! Run away!" But the disciple didn't move. The animal seized him with its trunk, casting him to one side, and went on its way. Hurt and bruised, the disciple lay unconscious on the ground. Hearing what happened, his teacher and his brother disciples came to him and carried him. With help of the medicine, he soon regained consciousness. But someone asked him, "You knew the elephant was coming. Why didn't you leave the place?" But, he said, "Our teacher told us that God himself has taken all these forms of animals as well as men. Therefore, thinking it was only the elephant god that was coming, I didn't run away." At this, the teacher said, "Yes, my child, it is true that the elephant god was coming, but the Mahut god forbade you to stay there. Since all are manifestations of God, why didn't you trust the Mahut's words? You may have heeded the words of the Mahut god. God dwells in all beings, but you may be intimate only with good people. You must keep away from the evil-minded. God is even in the tiger, but you cannot embrace the tiger on that account. You may say, why run away from the tiger, which is also a manifestation of God? The answer to that is, those who tell you to run away are also manifestations of God, and why shouldn't you listen to them? God undoubtedly dwells in the hearts of all, holy and unholy, righteous and unrighteous. But a man should not have dealings with the unholy, the wicked, the impure. He must not be intimate with them. With some he may exchange words, but with others he shouldn't even go that far. One should keep aloof from such people. So in this story, Sri Ramakrishna indicates that we should live in this world using our discernment. Although God resides in all beings, without a clear understanding of the nature of the world, we can become caught in worldly and trivial matters. We should seek out things that will elevate our nature, like the Mahut god in the story, instead of things that will drag down our spirits to the base animal nature, the elephant god. We also need to know how to apply our spiritual learnings to our lives in the right context. For example, showing compassion is a good spiritual practice. However, the proper way to show compassion in one situation will differ in another situation. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna proposes giving in peacefully to his cousins the Kauravas out of so-called compassion. However, Sri Krishna admonishes him that neglecting his duties as king is not a correct show of compassion. Sri Ramakrishna's stories were his gifts to the world. Such was his sacrifice. Even when his throat was pained with cancer, he continued to tell his stories and share his wisdom with his devotees. Sri Ramakrishna was not a big proponent of rote book learning, and what is meant here is that simply familiarizing oneself with scriptures was not enough for him. To truly understand the scriptures, he believed one had to hold God in one's heart. Otherwise, learning the scriptures becomes a mere vainglorious exercise. Sri Ramakrishna was extremely skilled at condensing the essence of the scriptures into these familiar parables. He transcended words and pages and embodied the essence of the scriptures himself. The approach also reflects in his approach to embracing the divine. He took the abstract parts of the scriptures and transformed them into teachings that are personal, that connect emotionally. Likewise, Sri Ramakrishna was able to render a personal God from an abstract God. Thank you, friends.
So friends, we were all fortunate to listen to these three masterpieces from young minds who have dwelt and practiced the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and are continuing to practice those. You can see that how simple and practical the truth is. It is only because of our minds being too crooked, things become inverted. That which is the simplest appears to be very tough. Oh, spiritual things are so difficult. Well, our minds are crooked. That is why the simple becomes tough. And that which is really meaningless, tough, of no value really, that appears to be very good, nice and worthy of paying attention. It is when we see Sri Ramakrishna, this simple life, and in simplest words, the most profound truths have been presented in a practical way. It is the glory of our modern age that although there is the explosion of information all around, what we need is not all that, just a few things that will be able to bring total fulfillment to our lives. That is what we need. So let us keep on dwelling on these teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, the life of Sri Ramakrishna, a pristinely pure, unparalleled treasure of spiritual truths you will find there. It is a great blessing for our modern age that there is this source of all solace, source of fulfillment available right to us. We shall conclude this symposium with another song. It is about keep on chanting the name of Sri Ramakrishna. Name of God is full of the power of God. God's power, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, is condensed in his name. God's power is condensed in his name. There is no difference between God and God's name. If you have the name of the God, you have God. So keep on all the time. Keep on singing, chanting, remembering the name of God. That is this beautiful devotional song. You are not going to be just sitting there and relaxing. So my thanks to all the speakers today in this symposium, Rashmi, Joshi, RIshi, Dhar, and Sarah Phat. And before we begin this concluding song, let me tell you something about upcoming programs. The next Sunday, we shall talk about entertainment. We all like entertainment. It is, I have, the title is entertainment. So it is entertainment. But on that Sunday, before the Sunday talk, there will be a training from the Homeland Security Department about an active shooter. If the active shooter is on the campus or in this premises, what should we be doing? So if you want to get this training, please be here before 4 o'clock. So, in the morning? No. 4 p.m. You can come in the morning and do meditation at 4 o'clock, right? No problem. So, and the other programs during the week will go on as usual, the Tuesday and Friday lectures. And then we have the spiritual retreat coming up on 23rd of this month. And there are now only 3 days left to register at a concessional rate, a discounted rate. So, otherwise from after 14th, the rate is going to become $30. So, if you want to register for this retreat, please do it as soon as possible. You can register with Naomi in the office, you can register online, or you can mail the check with your biographic details. So that's about it. Let us recite the closing prayers. No, first closing prayers. So please join in reciting the closing prayers. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. After this song that concludes the symposium, the next program in today's celebration is reciting the names of Sri Ramakrishna in beautiful short verses. It is called Nama Sankirtanam. It is a kirtan-like thing. So that will follow immediately after this concluding song.
लगन मनन मगन बना जा मना, लगा मगन चरणन में मगन बना जा मना, लगा मगन चरणन में मगन बना जा मना, नाम का मना सदा राम कृष्ण राम कृष्ण राम का मना। प्रभु पूर्ण नाम है कर चिर सुंदर नयना विराग है जान सत्य मग्न वही यह जग सपना मना सत्य एकमेव वही यह जग सपना मना सत्य एकमेव वही यह जग सपना मना राम का मना सदा राम कृष्ण राम का मना नाथ करे मोहनाश भरे हृदय में प्रकाश हरे कर्म भाष दूर करे संचलता नाथ करे मोहनाश भरे हृदय में प्रकाश हरे कर्म भाष दूर करे संचलता उनकी कृपा दृष्टि मिटा दे समूल भव शामना कृपा दृष्टि मिटा दे समूल भव शामना कृपा दृष्टि मिटा दे समूल भव शामना राम भावना सदा राम कृष्ण नाम भावना वही परम सुख निधान अकारण करुणावान सहज करे नत जन को परम पद प्रदान वही परम सुख निधान अकारण करुणावान सहज करे नत जन को परम पद प्रदान वही कारण शबद बना शरण तज दे भ्रम नामना कमल चरण बना शरण तज दे भ्रम नामना कमल चरण बना शरण तज दे भ्रम नामना नाम का मना सदा राम कृष्ण नाम नामना लगा लगन चरणन में मगन बना जा